to Divinely Driven Results. I'm your host, Elise Smith, Christian business strategist, and we get to empower Christian women entrepreneurs to be able to reach their sales goals by partnering with God, empowering their mindset, and utilizing biblical business strategy. Now, the question I have for you, amazing ladies that are watching this today, is are you feeling like you're spinning your wheels and you're just overly busy? We all know that feeling. Or maybe that there's something going on emotionally inside that you just keep stuffing down and hoping it will go away. Yeah, that's me. Or maybe you're not connecting with your clients as well as you would really like to. There's so many other things that can be affected by our frequency. And I am so excited to be able to bring on our incredible guest, Cristine Price, who is a licensed mental health counselor, author, and business owner herself. So please tell us more about who you are and what you do, Cristine.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. So I have been in the field of mental health and addiction recovery for over 30 years. And I've done a lot of personal work on myself, as well as, learning a lot about my clients. In fact, when I first started my master's program, I was more interested in emotional intelligence than in IQ. So that was where I was starting to really evolve. And so I've used that personal evolution in my life to really connect with people, find real solutions outside the box of traditional medicine, and also to, write books and educate and really train people. And so now what I do, I've kind of gone from private practice to trainer and author and speaker and, an educator, trying to create, actually to support a paradigm shift in the mental health field.
Beautiful. And we need that too. I think there's so much that people don't know about that field, or that we maybe just don't want to explore because it's hard for us sometimes. And so I love the fact that you are really just owning that space, and she does it in such a beautiful way, guys. So tell us more about these 3Ds. Where did this concept come from?
Well, I'll tell a bit about my history with it as well. So I was more interested in the field of psychology because I was trying to figure out myself as a young adult. And I had developed the first D early in, I think, even in my childhood and adolescence, but it's called detached. So detached is the first D. That one will interfere with connection. It interferes with our ability to connect to God, to connect to other people, to connect to ourselves. And so this detached style, like in business, what that looks like is I was actually in sales as a young adult, and I was like doing really well with my sales. I was doing the party plan, selling stuff from people's homes. And those were my only friends. Okay. So my social life was limited to the people that were actually my customers. I really didn't have any strong friendships. And even in my relationship, it was strained. And so a lot of times, like someone in that field will be really strong. The plus side is they're really good with routines and structure and getting things, done, being pretty efficient because they don't spend a lot of time like chatting or, doing fluffy stuff. And so that was me. But it left me feeling kind of empty in my life. And so, and it will affect, as a parent, for example, when your child comes home and says, oh, Susie and Julie wouldn't play with me today, rather than go deeper and work with that child to heal the emotions. It's like, well, let's make some cookies. Let's get something done and get your mind off it, which is okay, but it's not validating. Yeah. And, and in business, if we're not validating the people we're working with and really hearing them, we'll lose them. We'll lose those relationships.
Absolutely.
So that's the first D.
I love that. So these are the 3Ds, or basically the styles for frequency. Is that right?
Well, these are all what they are, how they relate back to frequency is that they're lower frequency emotional and social styles. So there's a way to live at a higher frequency. And, in each of these 3Ds, as we talk about them, you'll kind of see like they have a vibe to them. And so the vibe, is kind of empty. And, there's something missing with that detached style. So raising that frequency will improve your bottom line, which is your income, your, your actual, results. But it's kind of counterintuitive for some people. It's like, well, if I take the time to, if I spend twice as much time with somebody, am I really going to get the results? And ultimately, it's a higher frequency model of like, you kind of got to let go of, some of the nuts and bolts and, additive, kind of business thinking, and think more balanced and whole.
Yeah, I can relate to that actually. I mean, when I first got started in business and my network marketing days, I was that person who would totally spam her friends and family and all of that just because I didn't know any better. But it was very much that business transactional relationship. And then I found over the years and, from my own experiences that it really does have to be starting with that relationship. You do need to build that relationship with that person in order to be able to know how best to serve them. And then, of course, that's going to really increase your income. So it does make sense that we sometimes have to slow down to speed up, right?
Yeah, and to get results from different, it might look different. I mean, it might be that the result is that you have a certain amount of fulfillment and contentment. And it's not just about what's your bottom line financially.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. Well, good. Okay. The first D is detached. What's the next one?
The second one is disorganized. So this is, so after I did a lot of emotional shifting in my life, and then I had a whole lot of emotional like stuff to work through, but I kind of didn't want to face it all. So I was better. So it's a little higher frequency. I was better, but I still avoided going deep within myself. So this one looks like the really busy, entrepreneur type that has a lot going on. It doesn't have a lot of space in her schedule for self-care or for things that people are talking more about now than they were when I was in this place, which is yoga and mindfulness and meditation and some of those types of things. And so what that, typically someone who's in that disorganized style, they keep themselves really, really busy and going. And if they slow down and stop, the fear is, I'm going to go into depression. I'm going to I'm not going to be able to get back up. And so there's some avoidance, but it's kind of a unconscious avoidance for some of what needs to be dealt with or slowing down. But the plus side is these are the entrepreneurs that are high energy and really productive. And if they can get into balance there, they're going to have a lot more success with, ultimately. So again, it's like that counterintuitive, like and this was the big thing is I hadn't learned to meditate at this point in time in my career. And I was just really building my private practice at this point. And I felt like there was just so much to do. And so it actually took me into a health crisis. Now, if you go into a health crisis, you're forced down, right? Exactly. And so I had to clear my schedule. And so when I did that, I actually hired my very first business coach. And it was somebody who taught balance strategies. And it was kind of, and part of what she did was emotional healing work. And so that was where I learned like, oh, you have to do this to be successcul. Another reinforcement of that.
I love that. No, you're preaching to the choir, and I'm glad there's hope for people like us because I on a personal note, my friend is taking me out for my birthday, and we're gonna do a float. Not a float test, a float tank. And she's like, oh, it's going to be so awesome. She's done it. And she was picking out the time and she said, yeah. And she said, we're going to do it for an hour. And I about freaked out. I was like, oh, wow. You're going to have me do nothing for an hour. You don't realize like how much that hurts my soul. and it is true. Yeah, it is very
Scary.
scary to be left
Mhm.
with your own thoughts sometimes. And, even during prayer and meditation, I feel like I have that connection with God and I'm kind of talking with him, but just to be left on my own, of course, God's still there, but, and so I think that it's kind of a pandemic, for lack of a better word, or
Yes.
epidemic in business, where we just get so busy all the time that we forget to take care of ourselves, and that we don't want to stop because we don't want to face some of those things that are in our mind, right?
Yeah. And just to kind of clarify how this all fits together, I
Mhm.
typically, when I work with a client, I look at 5 life areas to see where is their frequency. They might be great financially, but not so much with relationships or health, for example.
Mhm.
And then the other 2 areas are emotional and, um, let's see, personal. So the personal is that self-esteem and that self-care.
Yeah, yeah, so fascinating. And that how I learned it, kind of that lower frequency, is that catabolic energy, right? And when you're in that state, just like you said, it can affect your health. So if we
Yeah.
stay in kind of those lower frequencies, then catabolic, meaning that it kind of degrades you over time. And so, I mean, we've all worked ourselves really, really hard, and then our bodies are like, nope, I'm done. I'm taking the weekend off, and you can't make me, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so your body will take it if it needs it in any way that it can get it. And so we want to avoid that. So what's the best way to avoid that happening?
The catabolic you talked about, like the degree,
Yeah.
it is to be fully present and self-aware. And so for the disorganized style, you've got to get out of your head,
Mhm.
because there's this thing I talk about, the ego mind a lot. The ego mind will take you down a path that you don't know is going to dead end. And so being aware of your thought processes and, in that self-awareness, I talk a lot about consciousness and about, and, being still and silent is very uncomfortable for people, but that's when the ego mind is gone.
Ooh,
That's when it steps aside.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
it took me working with all kinds of, out of the box solutions to find that myself. So
Beautiful. How awesome. So what is number 3?
number 3 is the dependent. And this is one that I'm actually finally like having to step into. And I think, you may not go through all 3 of these in your lifetime, but I have experienced these 3 different areas. But my frequency has been rising. So as far as the emotional style, I think this is a higher frequency emotional style, but you're going to see other things that are lower.
Mm.
They tend to lean on others for support, and they lack power, that masculine side of business, that like push through it kind of energy. And often they'll allow the needs of others to interfere with their plans and their goals and their momentum. So sometimes a crisis will come up, and that dependent style will just set everything aside that was important, but kind of hard and scary at the same time, to go fix the other person or
Mm.
take care of this crisis, or, be consumed by something they can't really control. But it's a distraction from this harder thing, which is to evolve in a way that they haven't done before and move into a space that, it's unknown, or it's unsettling. The plus side of the dependent style is they are really empathetic. They get really close with people, and they're very likable. So and something I found is that a lot of the people that I drew to me to work with had this dependent style because I liked them. It's like, I like working, I want to support you, I want to help you.
Mm.
And so the other side of this is the codependent, where it's like, I could see that dependent style in them. And it was really kind of a reflection of me, I realized after a while. And I wanted to help them. But it ends up being draining in another way. And so then, because financially there's usually not a strong exchange with the dependent energy going on. And so a lot of times that's where, the dependent person, a lot of times their frequency financially is lower because they want to be a social worker. They want to be I laugh because I did get a social work degree, and it's been the biggest thing in the way of my business that I can tell you.
Wow.
It's sad. I feel like as long as I have a stronger, like a mission or a charity or something else somewhere that I can take care of people, then I feel more comfortable making money.
Gotcha.
But the masculine side would, the flip of that can be really detached. So these are kind of two extremes. So the dependent being very feminine in just kind of how they show up with people. But it's a high frequency emotionally because they're very sensitive. They're usually pretty in tune, and they've done a lot of their own emotional work, and they can help others, but there's still kind of that imbalance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like how you said that we might go through these at different times in our life. We might be feeling like maybe we have all three of those at different, days or whatnot, and so it can really just vary on how we experience life. So what is the thing that you feel like will help everyone to really increase their frequency to increase their income? Because that's kind of the bottom line here is like, we want to serve more people, grow our business in the Lord's way. What do you think you can tell us on that part of it?
So have an emotional tool. This is a tool that I started working with in my master's program based on emotional intelligence, which is actually a business strategy to have, this emotional intelligence. Daniel Goleman has written books for business around that. And the other author that really inspired me was Barbara DeAngelis, who taught me this kind of process of working through emotions. And so I kind of combined the learning from that, and over the last, I would say over 20 years, I've cultivated my own technique called the Love Solve method. And so the Love Solve method is a way of doing this emotional work in a structured way, so you know that you're not going to be lost in it and you're going to get through it, and it addresses the full emotional range, which is where I think a lot of times I had a client recently who said, when I start to do this emotional work, I get to here and it's miserable. And what this process does is it takes you all the way through.
Good.
So that you don't get stuck somewhere in the middle of that. And so it is called, Love Solve. And I actually have it as a free ebook. It ended up being the thing that I sent to almost every client. And so I can now say officially it's the #1 therapy tool that has transformed the emotional lives of over 1,000 clients.
Wow.
And it really is the thing that made the difference for more clients than anything else. And it's what I didn't learn in grad school. I laugh about that. They were not really a big fan of emotional intelligence, I found, in the psychology department. So I had to find all that on my own. And I found that it was the most important piece that was missing in my training at the time and my life.
Awesome.
And so
that sounds incredible. So where can they find that and more of what you've got going on?
So on my website, CristinePrice.com, there's no H in Cristine. CristinePrice.com. I've got a couple of ebooks on the homepage, plus an invitation to the summit that you are actually going to be featured on my summit in regards to healing money, healing, the financial side of the frequencies. And so the summit is entitled Raising Frequency Through Healing and Recovery. And that will also be posted there. So you can find lots of good stuff, CristinePrice.com. And I also have a Facebook group specifically for the Love Solve method, people that are getting the ebook and want some extra support in a little structure. There's a module there so you can get the ebook and, and kind of feel a walk through the process. Awesome. And some support there.
Good. So definitely check out CristinePrice.com without an H and her Facebook group. And then the summit is happening February 12th. Is that right?
Yes, it goes February 12th through 22nd. It's a 10-day, well, it's actually 11 days, I think. With, half of that are really premier speakers like yourself and, addressing issues like healing addictions, healing trauma, healing money, healing relationships. And those are all raising frequency. And then there's a 5-day masterclass where I talk about some of these advanced principles in the healing journey.
Awesome. That sounds so good. As you were talking, I was just thinking about the scripture, man is not meant to be alone. And, it's such a powerful concept to be able to utilize other people's talents and gifts and experiences and challenges that they've gone through, that she was able to come up with the 3Ds to be able to help us with today. And so just really taking advantage of coaches or mentors or counselors or, even summits and online events and things like that. It's so powerful. We are not meant to do this alone. God gives us plenty of resources for us to work through and raise up that frequency so that we can overcome some of those things that hold us back. Because I think sometimes we don't even realize how our emotional garbage can hold us back from, making that sale or hitting those income goals that you're looking for. So I am super excited to be speaking at her summit, and just everything she's doing is incredible. So make sure you go get that free ebook for sure, because you are definitely going to love it. So thank you so much for being on the show, Cristine. You have just been amazing. And I think that some of the ideas that you've given us here today really help us to feel like we're not alone in what we're going through and that there is hope.
And there's solutions that are outside the box, sometimes not what you hear, even in therapy, sadly, but and I think a lot of times in business, we miss the emotional side because but it's all in balance. It's all about balance.
Exactly.
Raising frequencies in all these life areas makes all the difference.
Awesome. I love it. Well, good. And if you guys want more tips and tricks on how to grow your business in the Lord's way, you're a Christian woman entrepreneur in the service-based industry, we would love to have you come join our Faithful Ladypreneurs Facebook group. It is a great place where you can connect with other Christian women entrepreneurs, and you can even advertise your business on Saturday's comment thread. So check out Faithful Ladypreneurs and make sure you go to CristinePrice.com. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Cristine. You've been amazing. And thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you next time on Divinely Driven Results.